Hey, we're gonna start on Lamed Amadeus. Kibel Hakashter Nasam Apostle. So a little over halfway down the page, 34b. A little over halfway down. Thank Hashem that we find Torah every day. Discuss our learning. We have this English. What Masech are you learning now in school? What parak? You know, see? Right? That's a kindness problem. So we're learning in English and for Shleimah for my father and for Talib and Menucha. So the Mishnah said that if something was done incorrectly in the Karban, there are times when you can go back and just do it again. For example, if someone that was puzzled to do that by cut the blood, someone else can go and catch the blood, and someone that's eligible to do that. If the blood was passed from the right hand to the left hand, so you put it back into the right hand. If it was taken from the holy vessel and put into a mundane vessel, so you put it back in the holy vessel. So we had those cases. So now it's Shricha. Umar says that all those cases are necessary. The heading of this Gemara is Kibul Akash V'Nosel Apostle Chulu, etc. In that etc. is where all of this discussion takes place. In all of those cases, necessary. All of those cases. Diash meaning puzzle. If it would only tell us the case about someone that's puzzle, Hava meaning my puzzle, I would have thought. What is the meaning of puzzle? Puzzle means invalid. That the person is invalid. Why would he be invalid? It says it must be his tummy. Well, you know why someone else can now go ahead and collect the blood, even though someone that was tummy did it? It's because tummy is not so bad. The chazi lavei the tzibur. Sometimes, if the entire congregation is 34b. I'm going to find it here.
So what's the next word? What's the next word?
So aval small. Yeah, we're holding my stricha. So we started by Ufman. Which page does this work? That's over here. We started over here. Kibul Akash V'Nosel. I explained all of the other cases, and now we're holding stricha. It's necessary because if it would only say the first case, which was puzzle, then I would say that why is it still eligible? If it was blood was received by someone, why is it still eligible? Because chazi lavei tzibur. Because tummy is not so bad. In other words, we're equating puzzle with tummy. That's the meaning of puzzle. Because sometimes if the entire congregation is tummy, you can still do the sacrifice, even the kainim or tummy. Aval small loy, but you never do it with the left hand. So I would say that if you catches the bun left hand, then we don't have an option of going back and redoing it because that's pretty bad. Yashmin and small, if we would say that no, you can do it with the left hand. No, we have one case, the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, when he's going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he has to carry the fire in one hand and the Keteris in the other hand. And right, remember it was like a complicated how to get the spices onto the so over there he has to use his left hand. So you see, the left hand is sometimes eligible, so maybe we would say that's why you're allowed to go back and do it. Aval klichal, but a mundane vessel, loy, that's never eligible. Yashmin klichal, but if it would tell us only about the case of klichal, I would think that why the mundane vessel, I would think why is that eligible? Because how bad is the klichal? It hasn't been consecrated yet, but go ahead and consecrate it and it'll be perfect. But the other ones, aval hanach, they can never be perfect. The left hand never turns into the right hand. Someone that's tamei doesn't just automatically become tar. There's a process. tzricha, it has to tell me all of those cases that nevertheless can still redo it, and it will be acceptable. It's good. I'm on track over there with the English. I'm going too fast. Correct the Gemara. The Gemara has a question. Lavlei dichoy. Dichoy means rejection. We've learned before that there's cases where that something happens to the sacrifice. We say, okay, it's invalid, and you can't go back and just redo things. You need a new sacrifice. Why over here, when there's a apostle, which means tummy, or if he's a klichol or a left hand, why do we say just go ahead and redo it? We should say that there was a problem with the sacrifice, something went wrong, and you can't do anything now. Amle Ravina Ravashi, Ravina, the end of the Talmudic period, says to Ravashi, goes back a few generations. We have a statement from Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti in the name of Rava Hamani. Want to know who this opinion is? It says that things don't get rejected and you can still redo them. You can recycle, reuse, whatever. You can fix things up. Who is this opinion? Hanan Hamitzrihu. This is the opinion of Hanan Hamitzri. He was one of the sages. It says, Leslie Dechuyin. He doesn't hold of Dechuyin. He holds that the sacrifice aren't rejected. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Hanan Hamitzri Aimer, I should tell you, this brisa has three opinions. See the names shortly. But one opinion says like this. I'm quoting you from Rashi. On Yom Kippur, there were two sacrifices, two goats that were brought as a pair, right? And there was a lottery. Which one went to Hashem and which one went to Azazel? The brought as a pair. Azazel was to be pushed off that cliff.
Yeah, sounds like.
So, one opinion says, let's say after the lottery, one of them dies. So, can you replace that one, or do you need a whole new pair? So, the first opinion says that you need an entirely new pair. Why? Because the one that was remaining is considered rejected. He holds Balichayim Nidachim. That even though it's alive, it's rejected because it's mate, its buddy, right? The buddy, its pair died, so you need a brand new two animals. Second opinion says that no, Balichayim are not nidachim. You just bring one other animal and match it up with this one, and it's good. You reset that. Identical.
Is that one of the requirements?
Yeah.
You redo the lottery?
So even though they did the lottery, and one of them died, so now you don't need the lottery anymore. You just bring one more and you replace the one that died. However, this opinion would hold that once it was already shechted, and you have the blood of the sacrifice in the cup, and then the mesa mishtaleach, and then the one that was being sent dies, then you have to spill out the blood, because once it's shechted, then it is rejected. It's only while it's alive that it's not rejected. Third opinion, and now this is where we're holding now, Hanan HaMitzri, he says, Afilu dam b'kais, even if the blood is in the cup, and what happens, and the other animal dies. Obviously, the one that's shechted is not alive now, so blood is in the cup. The other animal dies. So in other words, we don't have the pair anymore. We don't have its mate. It's not there. So it's not a mate. It's just another matching animal, identical animal. So what do? Maybe chaveira yemesavigla. It's not a problem. You just bring another animal. You say, okay, you're the pair, you're the other one, and you're going to send it to Azazel. You can replace it even after the blood is in the cup. See, Hanan HaMitzri holds that you don't say dicha, you don't say rejection. You don't say rejection. Okay. So that's the opinion of Ravina telling Ravashi in the name of Rav Yirmiyah Difti, in the name of Rava, that why over here don't we say that the animal, that the sacrifice is rejected after it was passed to the left hand, to the thing? It's because it's Hanan HaMitzri. Rashi Amar, Rashi says, Kol Shebiyadi Lo Yavidichi. No, it's not necessary to say it's specifically Hanan HaMitzri. These are things that are able to be fixed. Anything that's biyadai, that he has the ability to fix, to redo, so that we don't see rejection. Over there, by the goats, by the Yom Kippur goats, it's not necessarily that he's going to be able to get another goat. It's not biyadai. It's not in his ability. If there is a goat, then good. If there's not, then not. But over here, to pass it to the left hand, to the right hand, it's not a big deal, right? You can put it back in another cup. It's biyadai. It's all totally in his capability to do. Okay, so we have two answers here. One is that it's a specific opinion. Other one is that this goes under a different category, and it would be everyone's opinion. Amar Rav Shay. How do they write it there? Shia or Shay? Shia?
Rav Ashi.
After one line under Rav Ashi.
Shaya.
Amar Shaya. Amar Rav Shaya. Okay. So it sounds like someone said.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
just want to know that Rabbi Shaya, this is the only place in Talmud I heard that his name is mentioned.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so good.
I heard that on Rabbi Stepansky's shir when I was preparing.
He probably knows. Amar Rav Shaya. Beautiful. I think Naftali told me that every Masechta has one name that's introduced that doesn't exist in any other Masechta.
And it's a Masechta. And if there is a thing, Masechta, there's not a single name, means it's not a real Masechta. That's why what's it? Shekel, let's see.
You tell me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Shalom is telling me that when they remember there was a story where someone forged the Yerushalmi on Kachim. We lost the Yerushalmi on Kachim. We don't have it. Someone based on different places in Yerushalmi where quotes Gemaras, things get quoted here and then. So he collected from all the different places in the Yerushalmi. He recreated a Yerushalmi on Kachim, and he claimed that he discovered it. And it was a forgery, and a lot of people were. I saw Svarim where it said, "Now that we have the Yerushalmi on Kachim, this proves my point," and they thought it was real, and got busted. But part of that process was that there's this tradition that every Masechta has one new name that's introduced. They didn't find it in there. That's what Shalom's telling me, right? That's it. Okay. Amar Rav Shia, Rav Shaya. Kavaseder Rav Ashi Mistabra makes sense what Rav Ashi is saying. Man shamat lei dislei dechuyin. Who's the one that holds of dichui? Who's the one that holds of rejection? If this is Rabbi Yehuda, opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is the Tana, Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanan, as was taught in the Mishnah, Vaydam Rabbi Yehuda nishbach adam yamas mishtaleach. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda is one of the opinions that we were quoting before. He's the one that says that if nishbach adam, if the blood spilled, you hear what's happening? We didn't go this way. We were doing it the other way. We were only saying yamasa, that mesa mishtaleach. There's two goats, right? One of them is being brought as a sacrifice. One is being pushed off the cliff. Sacrifice is brought, and we were talking before about if the one that's being pushed off the cliff just died. So what do you have to do? Do you have to replace the whole thing, or you need two new ones? Anyway, he says like this. Rabbi Yehuda says that if the cup of blood spills, then you can't use the one that's alive to be sent off the cliff because it's dachay. First off, yamas mishtaleach, mesa mishtaleach. If the one that was supposed to be sent off the cliff dies, just drops dead right there, then you can't use the blood because it's dichay. So this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Shamin and Leidamar, we also know that Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol Shebiyadi Le'avidisha. We also know that he says that anything that's in your capability to do is not considered dichay. The Tanya was started in the Brayso. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Kei Sechad Hayem Emali Midam Ateruvus V'Zork Gezrik Achas Keneged Ha'Yisayid. Shmamina Kol Shebiyadi Le'avidisha. Shalom, I want to use your Gemara just to explain this. Can I take your Gemara for a second? There's a discussion in by the Carbon Pesach that if there would be an animal that was left, one of the whole congregation brought a Carbon Pesach, right? So if someone's blood spilled out, the blood wasn't sprinkled. So how do we? What's the safety feature? Make sure that we get everyone's blood sprinkled. There's a lot going on. So they said, Rabbi Yehuda says that on Erev Pesach, a kohen would fill a cup with blood of Pesach offerings that had intermingled on the floor of the temple courtyard and apply it to the altar. That's the safety feature, just in case. So that if one of the vessels holding the blood of Pesach offering had spilt on the floor before it was applied to the altar, the result will be that this application of intermingled blood renders the Pesach offering of blood spilt valid. Yeah, so what we're seeing from this is that Rabbi Yehuda holds that even if something happened to it, like spilt, which we were saying before that's considered rejection, right? But if you can pick it up off the floor and apply it, so it's not considered rejection. So even Rabbi Yehuda that holds of rejection, he's the big rejection enthusiast, the dichay enthusiast, but nevertheless, he would hold that biyadei is not considered dachay. Okay, that's the shredder from there. So, the sages said to Rabbi Yehuda, we continue the conversation. 1 second. The blood that you're collecting from the floor came out of the animal's neck and it went straight on the floor. Umar says, Mina Yadi. How do they know that it went straight on the floor? We're saying possibilities, and then they're like jumping to a conclusion that that's what happened. What they said was maybe it wasn't accepted by the keli, maybe it went straight onto the floor, maybe they didn't collect the blood. Amalahan. So Rabbi Yehuda responds to that claim that how you're going to kasher it? It fell on the floor and you're just picking it off the floor. I didn't mean that it's going to become kosher if it goes straight on. I meant it was accepted into a keli, and then it's built on the floor, and you picked it up off the floor. That's what I'm referring to. The safety feature that Rabbi Yehuda is putting in place is that after it was accepted into a keli but spilt, you were able to collect it. Who gufa mina yada? How does Rabbi Yehuda know that it was probably collected in a keli? That he's saying that would be the case. It says, "Because kayanim's rizim va'avdin hey." That's like shia. Hey, umishtabchen. That the kayanim they work quickly, and it's possible that it's spilt. They're rushing around. The Gemara has a question on this. Dam tamtzis murav by, how do they translate dam tamtzis? The blood of. It's not the blood that's not is tamtzis probably means squeezed out. Oh, they say drained. It means it's not the blood. Which blood are you supposed to use to sprinkle? It's the blood that comes spurting out right by the shechita, the pressure. Blood that oozes out afterwards, that's not the blood that's supposed to use. The problem here is you're picking up blood off the floor to have that safety feature that you'll be able to make sure that you get the blood of all the sacrifices that's all mixed in on the floor and all of this, and you have like one mixture that's going to be poured on the altar will correct any problem that happened. So 1 second, but you have in there, you also have dam tamtzis. You have blood that's not eligible to go on the altar. It says, well, don't worry about that. Rabbi Yehuda tamei dam tamtzis kari dam. Actually, it's considered dam. It's considered blood. The blood that oozes out, that's drained out. The Tanya, Zod and Bryce, dam tamtzis ba'azara. Usually, someone eats blood. There's a very strict punishment for blood. It's kares. Eating blood, it's like a forbidden path. It's kares. Dam tamtzis is not the real blood. That's only ba'azara. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer bekaris. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yehuda says it's karis, which means it is the real blood. So Rabbi Yehuda holds that this is the real blood, so we're not concerned about that. But Rabbi Yehuda says that Rabbi Yehuda would agree that this is not eligible to be offered on the altar. It doesn't affect the atonement, because only the blood that the life goes out with, which is the blood that spurts out, not the blood that oozes out later, the person, the animal is already not alive then. Ella Rabbi Yehuda Tamei, rather we need a different answer. We're not going to say that the dam tamtis is actually eligible, because Rabbi Elazar tells us Rabbi Yehuda would agree that it's not eligible. Rather, what we're saying is here is damar ein dam mevatel dam. I know there's dam tamtis mixed in. That doesn't mean that I don't have the original blood that's supposed to be put on the altar here as well. I say that even if there's more dam tamtis, but one Rabbi Yehuda holds that min b'mina is not batal. Two types of blood is not batal. Whatever it is, dam is not mevatel dam. Amar lahem Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says to them, l'devrechem, according to you, that you can't sprinkle the blood from the floor. Lama paikim azara. Why do they stuff up the drain in the azara to have the blood all get collected there? According to Rabbi Yehuda, why are they doing that? Because they want to collect from the blood, and they'll be able to put it on the altar, and then there'll be the safety feature to make sure that nothing, there was no sacrifice here that didn't get applied to the altar. But according to the sages that say you're not going to do that, so why do they stuff it up to plug up so that it doesn't drain out? Amrulai, they said shvachul of ne'aran sheyahalchu ad arkuvusayim b'dam. It's a praise to the sons of Aaron that they should walk until their ankles in blood, show how many sacrifices there are, and there's sometimes in cooking, like they leave all the spices and all the things, and the thing shows, oh, we got a lot going on here. In Svarim, people do that sometimes when they learn. They take out another sefer and another sefer, and then until then, it's piled up, and look at all the learning that's happening. But here, look at all the sacrifices that they brought. You see the blood is on it. Okay. Adam havi chatzitza, Gemara says. So they're going to be walking until their ankles in blood, and they're not stepping on the floor. We said that they have to be walking on the floor. I didn't say a bracha yet, right? My answer is lachu, lev chatzitza. It's wet. And wet is not a chatzitza. It's not a problem. So, yeah, I was talking to the Bachram in the yeshiva, and I forget how it came up, but someone said, but when you go to the mikveh, you have to lift your feet off the floor. So no, you don't have to lift your feet off the floor. You just dip down. He understood that when you go in, you have to be like floating in the. The reason why you don't have to is because when you walk down the steps, your feet got wet from the water, and that's good enough. If it was a spring and the water was just coming out then, and you were standing there, you were going to look in the spring, but you were on the floor, and then the water came after, then you would probably have to lift up the feet, but that's usually not what happens. So, right, like we say in Mishnayos, Mipnei Shamayim Mekadmen, because the water came first. You hear the people saying Mishnayos Kaddish. Mipnei Shamayim Mekadmen. It's good enough. The water was there first, and when it went in, it went. Okay. It's probably good enough also when you dip a keli in the mikveh, make your hand wet, and then you hold the keli, and then you put the hand in the water, and then you hold the keli. You don't have. So I think some people think you have to release it. It could be you do. We have to release it, but it could be that if you're holding it gently and the water was there before, it could be that's acceptable. Anyway, if it's not too precious, you release it. But sometimes you see things on the bottom of the mikveh. So it's lachu v'lei chatzitza. It's wet. Wet is not going to be a chatzitza. Over there, it's blood on the floor. It's not going to be a chatzitza between the feet and the floor. The Tanan, it was taught in the Mishnah, Adam, V'adiyoy, V'advash, V'achalav, Yiveshim, Chaytzitzim. If there's blood, ink, honey or milk, if it's dry, is it milk or is bad? What do they say with it?
Honey or milk?
Milk. If it's dry, then it's chaytzin. Lachen, if it's wet, ain't chaytzin. So there's no problem. It's bad. But the clothing is going to get dirty. The clothing gets dirty, then and they do the service, it's possible. You can't walk around with dirty clothing. The kayanim, the chitim in the middle, so maybe they hold it up, they lift it up as they're walking. When they bow, they lift up they lift it up a little bit. Everything is barefoot, yeah. So, Batanya, you can't do that. It says midayvad, right? It has to be the measurement. It can't be larger, it can't be smaller. You can't lift it up. It has to be against the skin. Marianne says, by lachas evarim lekevesh, the lab avaydihi. We're talking about they would walk in it when they're not doing the service. They're walking in that blood, and then they can lift up the hem because it's not an actual service. What are they walking? They're walking not the blood. They're walking the limbs to the ramp. Carrying the limbs to the ramp is not an avodah. Beloi, that's not a problem. That is an avodah. Vatanya v'hikriv akayin esakol zoylachas evarim lekevish. The kayin will bring everything, will offer everything. That means he walks the limbs to the ramp. That's going to be problematic if the clothing isn't on properly. Ella bailachas eitzim lamaracha. He's not walking the limbs he's walking the wood up to the altar to put it on the pyre, right? Or the fire. The lavavaidi, that's not considered an avaida. Ulavaida hechi asli. So, but 1 second. You're giving me a case when he's walking where it's not an avaida. Problem is that there are avaidas that he does need to do, and you're telling me that he's somehow, what's he doing? Flying over the blood? He's not on the ground. It says asli yitzba. There were platforms that he could walk on that was made out of stone that did not separate, that was considered part of the floor. So in other words, there was lower areas where the blood was up to their ankles, but there they would only go in that to walk the wood up. But for the things that they needed to walk, that was actually an avodah, they had to walk on those platforms. Yeah. The mats in the mikveh. They have mats to keep you above the water, you don't slip. Okay, we have a new Mishnah. I mentioned this before. We say, talking about now that he has the improper thought of doing part of the service out of the allotted time or out of the allotted place. However, what he's thinking here is as he's shechting the carbon, he's thinking that he's going to eat something that's not edible. What would that be? One of the limbs, one of the organs of some sort. He's going to eat something. He's going to eat it out of its allotted time, out of its allotted place. It's not even edible, but so he's thinking about something that's not edible. The thoughts of piggle intentions. Or he's imagining that he's going to burn something, offer something on the altar that's not normally offered on the altar, like the flesh of the meat of the sacrifice, which is eaten. He's going to offer it out of its allotted time. It's kosher. That doesn't invalidate it because there's no such thing as eating that or offering that. Rabbi Lezer Paisel, Rabbi Eliezer, this is Rabbi Lezer ben Horkenes, he says no, it's still possible. Lechol davar shedarki lechol. If he has intention to eat something that's normally eaten, or to offer something that's normally offered, well, that's a problem. However, pachis mikazayas, but doesn't have intention to do this to a full kazayas, less than a kazayas. It's going to do it out of its allotted time, or out of its allotted place. So then that's going to be kosher. It's not a shear to make piggle. Lechol kachatzi zayis al-hakti kachatzi zayis. We were quoting this many times before we had this. He wants to eat a half a zayis and offer a half a zayis out of its allotted time. That's kosher. Why? Because eating and burning do not combine to make a shear. I've said that sometimes it does, if the way that he thought about it was achilas adam and achilas mizbeach, then there was an opinion that said two types of eating, the consuming of himself and consuming of the altar. That would be that was more problematic. Here he didn't have the thought of consuming the altar yet, thought of burning on the altar, not achilas mizbeach. If someone slaughters the sacrifice, lechal kazayas mina ar, wants to eat kazayas of the skin, the hide, mina reitev, from the gravy, mina kipa, from the kipa is the pieces of spices and small particles of meat that end up on the bottom of the pot. You know, when you're done, after you've eaten everything, there's still some stuff left on the pot that you usually spill out. That's the kippah. Oh, it is? Mina alal. Alal is a vein in the neck that's too hard to eat. Mina tzames. Tzames are the bones. He has intention to eat the bones. Mina gidin are the other types of veins. Mina karnayim, he wants to eat the horns. Mina tlafayim, from the hoofs. And he has intention, all of these types of eating, out of its allotted time, out of its allotted place. It says kosher. Those are not edible. Those don't. Now, listen to this. If that entire sacrifice was pickle, because you had intention to eat something that's normally eaten, or to offer something that's normally offered, and you actually did create the pickle in the sacrifice, and then you went ahead and you ate the horns and the hoofs and the hide and the thing, you're not chayiv because of pickle, because that wasn't edible. Or nicer, or if the horns were left over and not burnt, the bones, or tameh, or if the person was tameh. He ate it, he's not going to be chayiv. Okay. Tell me again. Pickle is when an animal, then when the sacrifice, intention of the sacrifice was going to be out of its allotted time. So the entire sacrifice becomes pickle, and anyone that eats it, it's kares. Now, we're talking about here, but let's say he eats from parts of the animal that aren't edible. So from the bones or something, from the hoofs. This is not chayiv. Yeah. Or that was the last case that we said. Not chayiv if you eat. It's a whole discussion in the halacha regarding gelatin. If you gelatin from non-kosher animals, right? Because gelatin is not edible. The Torah says that animals are kosher or not kosher. It's only referring to the part of the animal that's edible. We're talking about the part of the animal that's not edible. The problem is that you take the bones that are not edible and you make them edible. You create gelatin. Does the prohibition that was never on it come back, or do we say that does the prohibition that was never, like surface and now it becomes prohibited? Or do we say no, it's permissible? Big machlekes in the Paiskim about 100 years ago. Yeah, you can get vegetable. The question is it permissible to have that? There's some major Paiskim allowed it. That's what we're talking about. The Torah said you can't have pig, but only the pig. This is it's not part of it. There's something else called lanolin. What lanolin is? It's a product from the hair of certain animals. The question is that kosher if it would be put on something that anyway. It's the same as someone that shechts. This is a female animal sacrifice, and he has intention lechel shlil to eat the fetus. Shilya bachutz. The fetus or the shilya is the afterbirth placenta. Slight pigel. That's not considered pigel because that you didn't have intention to eat from the sacrifice out of the. I mean, what does bachutz mean? Bachutz means bachutz mizmanei, I guess. Yeah. I understand, but bachutz usually means outside of its allotted place. But it must mean bachutz usmani. Same thing would apply if someone is doing malika on the birds, and turtle doves, and he has intention to eat the eggs outside of its allotted time. Leipigal, that's not considered. It's not part of the animal. It's not part of the bird. Cholav mukdashin ubeitzei tayrin. Let's say the milk of a female animal or the eggs of the birds. In chayav and shum pigel v'nais. Not only do they not make pigel, but if the animal was pigel, this doesn't go under the category of pigel, and it won't be chayv b'fit. Amar Rabbi Lazar says, listen to this. Pigel bezevach. This is Rabbi Lazar the Amira. Yeah, Rabbi Lazar ben Pidas. Pigel bezevach, spagal ashlil. Our Mishnah didn't say this. It actually left it out. Our Mishnah left out this detail. You see. I don't know if you noticed in our Mishnah, we said that if someone had intention to eat from the shlil, fetus, or the placenta after the allotted time, the sacrifice does not become pigel because of that, because it's not part of the it's not the actual sacrifice. What happens if the sacrifice became pigel, and then he ate from the shlil and shli? So it turns out that our Mishnah left out that detail. It left it out. However, it comes along Rabbi Lazar and he says, pigel bezevach, if the sacrifice actually became pigel because he had intention to eat part of the animal that's normally eaten out of its allotted time, and then he goes ahead and he eats, therefore the animal is pigel, then he goes ahead and he eats from the placenta, or eats from the shlil, the fetus, he's chayav for eating pigel. Even though it wouldn't make pigel, but it becomes pigel. That's what he's saying. It works only one way. For shlil, but if he has intentions to eat from the shlil, then leinis pagal azevach. The sacrifice doesn't become pigel. Big chiddush of Rabbi Lazar. If you notice, he found this in the Mishnah, Rabbi Lazar, in the Mishnah, that it doesn't mention that, so he can get away with saying this, and because it didn't have that detail. Pigel ba'alel. Let's say he has intention to eat from the alel, so nispagal amura. Now we were talking in the Mishnah that it doesn't help the alal, which was the vein in the neck, won't make the it's not edible, so we won't make the animal. But here he's talking about a bird. It says it is edible. So the mura, now the mura is called the crop. You know what that is? It's a part of the it's if you take out the insides of the rooster, you spread it out. The inside's like this long, you spread it out. You're kashering the chicken, spread it out. So it's just like a tube. The whole thing is like a tube. And in one spot you have like this little pouch, like a little pouch. Yeah, it probably is. On the bird, it's this little pouch, right as it gets like wider on the neck, right when it gets wider. In that pouch, there's like these two little pebbles that like grind up the grain. At least the one that I when I was learning smicha, we taught us this. Okay, so the crop is not edible, and but it becomes pigel according to. Is it edible? It's edible al yedei adchak. That means that there are people that do eat it, but it's not normally eaten, so it would become pigel. B'mura. However, if he thinks about eating the mura out of its allotted time, the crop, then leinis pagal alel, then the other parts of the animal don't become pigel. Pigel be'imurim. Let's say he has thoughts of, okay, listen to this, of burning the imurim are the limbs that are burnt on the altar. He has thoughts of burning the imurim out of its allotted time. Spagul parim. The entire sacrifice becomes pigel. Okay? The parim, if he has intention of of eating the flesh out of its allotted time, then the emurim don't become pickle. Why? Because emurim are not edible. It's not typical. Okay, so basically what we just learned from Rebbe Lazar is that there are certain things that work only one way, even though it can't become pickle, even though it can't make pickle, but it could become pickle. That's what we just learned. Let's bring a support for Rebbe Lazar. B'shavin, they agree. This is a machlekes between Reb Shimon and the Chachamim that are going to argue later in the next parak and a few prakim down the road. No, it's in the fourth parak. They're going to argue about does pickle apply to the param anisrafim, the bulls that are entirely burnt. Yeah. Oh, was I correct?
It's inside the Joe sound.
Okay. Right. So, pickle name b'param anisrafim. That's what the Rabbanan say, that it applies. Reb Shimon says pickle only applies to the animals that are brought on the mizbeach achitzan, on the outer altar. The question is, there's a comparison that's done. Pickle, the laws of pickle were taught by Shlamim. The question is, why is it being taught by the Shlamim? And what is the Shlamim teaching us about all the other animals, all the other sacrifices? We have to teach it specifically by Shlamim. So Reb Shimon says it's coming to teach me pickle is only on sacrifices that are on the outer altar, just like a Shlamim is on the outer altar. It doesn't apply if the blood is sprinkled inside and the rest of the animal is burnt. However, b'shavin, but they will agree, even though there's a machlekes about this, they will agree she'im chishev b'achilas parim u'b'sreifasan le'asav le'klam. If he has intention, while he's doing one of the services, to eat from the parim tomorrow, it's not eaten, right? You don't eat the parim. He has intention to eat it, or he has intention to burn it in the Beis Hadeshin, which is where they're burnt. They're burnt outside the temple. Tomorrow, on the wrong day. It says Le'asav that does not make pickle. Even though the Rabbanan say there is pickle in these things, but not if that were his thoughts. Okay, my love, what are we discussing over here? Achishev be'imurim. If he would have thought about the imurim, which means to burn them, which are burnt on the altar, the imurim are burnt on the altar. He would have had thoughts to burn them on the altar. Tomorrow, the spaglu parim. So even though let me use your Gemara. Shalom. Yes, so where are we holding? Okay. But if you had pickle intended about the 6 of these bulls, the meat of the bull would become pickle, according to the sages. This is exactly what Rebbe Lezer said. Okay, 1 second. Rebbe Lezer also said that improper intent about the sacrificial parts of the bull render the bull pickle. Said that clearly. Said pickle be'imurim spaglu parim. Exactly. He said if you had intent about the imurim, even though the imurim don't become pickle, the limbs that are offered on the altar, they don't become pickle. Someone eats them to be chayav, but they could make pickle, and that's what we're seeing over here as well. That that's because he was thinking about eating the parts of the animal that are eaten, that it's not supposed to be eaten, or the burning of it was on the outside the temple. But if you would have thoughts of the part that's in the temple, then the animal would become pickle. The entire animal would become pickle, which means that even though the imurim don't become pickle, but they could make the entire animal pickle. Gemara says, "Lai, that's not a good proof, because chishev beimurim nespaglu emurim atzmam." Actually, what's happening here is not that it makes the entire. You can take this back. Not that it makes the entire sacrifice pickle. It's talking about that the imurim themselves will be pickle. Rashi says, for example, the kidneys or the what's the yisers covered the diaphragm, that will become pigul, but the flesh would not be pigul. The only thing that can
only something that could be eaten can become.
he's saying now is that the only thing that could make the entire sacrifice pigul would be something that it itself would also be pigul if the sacrifice was pigul.
It's impossible to make an animal pigul.
So in other words, like this, how does the sacrifice become pigul? He has thoughts of eating the flesh out of the proper time, or offering the limbs out of the proper time, or sprinkling the blood out. Now, what happens then is the entire sacrifice becomes pigul, and if he eats from any part of the sacrifice, so then he's chayav kares because he ate pigul. But let's say he has thoughts about something that would not become pigul. It would not become pigul if the entire sacrifice would be pigul. That those things don't become pigul. Yeah, like something like that. So here we're talking about on sacrifices that are entirely burnt outside the temple because they're param anisrafim. The blood is brought inside, and the flesh is taken out. So if someone says he's gonna no 1 second. He says if someone has intention to burn the organs, the limbs of burn the organs of the sacrifice out of its allotted time, the organs themselves don't become pigul. He has intention to burn the organs out of its allotted time. Rabbi Lazar says that the entire sacrifice does become pigul. We're trying to prove this from this case about what they'll agree on. It sounds like they would agree that if you would intend to burn the organs out of its allotted time, that the entire sacrifice would be pigul. He said it's not really a proof, because could be the organs themselves become pigul with those thoughts, but to make the entire sacrifice pigul, that would need to be something that it itself would become pigul if the sacrifice was pigul. Okay, maybe we should leave it over here. Tashima. Oh, okay. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.